What's up, guys? Now we're gonna discuss the muscular tissue. The chapter is almost done, so that's a good thing. Now, the muscular tissue, it says that muscles are responsible for movement, so this is the main function of the muscles. So, of course, to move any part of your body voluntarily, you need to use your skeletal muscles. And also your smooth muscles, like the intestines, they move but involuntarily, like you don't control them. So the main function of muscles is movement. Muscular tissue is composed of cells we call the muscle fibers. So we either call them muscle cells or we use the term muscle fibers, and they mean the same thing. These fibers contain actin and myosin filaments, which gather and slide past one another to perform the movement. So, who is responsible for performing the movement in the muscle cell or in the muscle fiber? They're the actin and myosin filaments. Those are the small structures responsible for performing the movement. Okay, without actin and myosin filaments, we cannot perform the movements. We cannot perform the unique movement of the muscle. So we need actin and myosin filaments. This is very important. It can also be assessed in a blank question format or any other question format. It's very important to know about the filaments, actin and myosin filaments. Now, muscles also serve as a heat generating function for the body. Okay, so this is the other function of the muscle. So we said movement, and now we're talking about the heat generating function. Of course, the classification of muscles, there are going to be smooth muscles, aka visceral muscles. We call them visceral because they are inside of the body in the viscera. And we're going to get the skeletal muscles and then the cardiac muscles. Cardiac meaning the heart muscles. Now, the smooth muscles or the visceral muscles, you can have a question telling you what are the characteristics or features of these smooth muscles or the visceral muscles, and you write down the whole thing. And of course, we can extract other questions where the answer is going to be short. Now, let's look at the whole thing. So they say that the fibers of the smooth muscle are spindle-shaped. So when we want to discuss or when we want to describe the characteristic or feature of the cell, we say that they are spindle-shaped. And they have two pointed ends. And they're thicker in the middle and taper at the both ends. Now let's look at the image to actually understand what is going on. So here is the smooth muscle cells. You can see that this here is a single muscle cell, a smooth muscle cell. You see the boundaries of this, the black line here. So they are spindle shaped, so they are thicker in the middle, as you can see here, and they're taper at the ends. Each muscle fiber is covered by a membrane called the sarcolemma. Okay, so the membrane that covers the muscle fiber or the smooth muscle fiber, we call it a sarcolemma. And the cell has one central nucleus. You can have a very important question, and it is actually a question that was in past papers. They're telling you to describe or what are the characteristics or features of the smooth muscle nucleus, and the answer is just you say it is one central nucleus, one or single central nucleus. The action of the muscle is involuntary. So, of course, you cannot voluntarily wave at me with your small intestines, can you? So, of course, it is involuntary. And the smooth muscles are located in the walls of the stomach, intestines, blood vessels, and other internal hollow organs. So, just pay close attention here. When we say walls of stomach, walls of intestine, that's easy. We can already know this is smooth muscle. But when we say walls of blood vessels, they're smooth muscles. But when we say the lining of the blood vessels is going to be different. Now let's go back to the epithelial tissue. To the very first epithelial tissue we had, the simple squamous epithelial tissue. We said there in the lining of blood vessels. In the lining of blood vessels, we have simple squamous epithelial tissue. But in the walls of the blood vessels, the tissue is smooth muscle. Okay, you can get confused between the two, so be careful. And of course, the walls of internal hollow organs. So just pay attention to the word walls and pay attention to the word linings, okay? They can be very confusing, tricky questions. Of course, we're gonna have, what is the type of tissue for each of the following? You can have walls of the blood vessels, maybe just changing some words to make it more difficult and make it more confusing. They're gonna say walls of arteries or walls of veins. Arteries or veins are basically blood vessels. Walls of stomach, walls of intestines, walls of the internal hollow organs, all of those are a smooth muscle tissue or visceral muscle tissue. Justify. Smooth muscles are also considered involuntary because smooth muscles fibers do not perform their function under human control, so they're involuntary. Justify. Smooth muscles are called smooth, or smooth muscles are named as such, and the answer because they lack the striations or the striped appearance seen in the skeletal and the cardiac muscles, so that's why we call them smooth. Skeletal muscles are under the voluntary control, so of course they are under the voluntary control. Like you can voluntarily, under consciousness, under awareness, control your movements, your arm movement, your leg movement, your trunk movement. So of course it is voluntary movements, voluntary control. And they're attached to bones via tendons, okay? This word is very important. Okay, you can have it as a blank question. So skeletal muscles are attached to bones via blank, and they're attached via tendons. When they contract, they cause movement of the body parts. They have the following distinctive characteristics or features. So the skeletal muscle fiber is long and cylindrical. It is often extends along the length of the muscle. So let's look at the image. This is the skeletal muscle. So we said it is long and cylindrical, as you can see it in here. What else? And we said that it is often extends along the length of the muscle. Okay, so it's long. The skeletal muscle fiber shows alternating dark and light crossbands, giving it a striated appearance. And for this reason, it is also called the striated muscle. Now look, we can see some striations going on here, some lines. So that's why we call it striated muscle. And it is also found in the cardiac muscle, by the way, as you can see here. But not in the smooth muscle. Smooth muscle do not have any striations. Looks smooth. So for this reason, it is called striated muscle. The skeletal muscle fiber is covered by a special membrane we call the muscle membrane, according to the book. And this membrane is different from one that covers smooth muscle fibers, which we call the sarcolemma. The skeletal muscle fiber is multinucleated, so we have multi-nuclei, meaning many nuclei, with its nuclei positioned at the periphery. So this is also description or features or characteristics of the nucleus of the skeletal muscle. Maybe we can give an example for each of the following: a multinucleated cells positioned at the periphery, and they're the skeletal muscles. The skeletal muscle fibers perform their function under human control, which is why they are called voluntary muscles. Now let's look at the very important question here telling you to justify that skeletal muscles are also called striated muscles. This is a very, very important question. And it is because the skeletal muscle fiber shows alternating dark and light cross bands, giving it a striated appearance. For this reason, it's called striated muscle. I want you to memorize this line very well. This is the answer for the justified question. Very important. So they show alternating dark and light cross bands. You can see like dark and light colors, okay, and they're alternating, and we can see them as striated. Justify. Skeletal muscles are also called voluntary because skeletal muscles perform their function under the human control. And the last muscle type we have is the cardiac muscle. The cardiac muscles are involuntary. So of course they are involuntary. You cannot control your heartbeat, can you? The heart beats involuntarily. The heart beats independent of your consciousness, independent of your awareness. Striated muscles found only in the walls of the heart. Okay, so you can have a question here, actually, very important question, telling you what is the type of tissue in heart muscle or the cardiac muscle, or what is the type of tissue in the walls of the heart, and the answer is cardiac muscle tissue. This is actually a funny question for me. Their contraction pumps blood out of the heart, so that's what happens when the heart contracts. When it contracts, it's gonna get smaller in size, so the blood is going to be pushed out of the heart. It's going to pump the blood out of the heart. While their ability to stretch, to get bigger, imagine like you're filling a plastic bag, you fill it with water, and you can see that the plastic bag can stretch and actually get bigger in size. That's exactly what happens to the heart. So they are able to stretch, they're able to get bigger in size, and this allows the blood to fill the heart chambers. Cardiac muscle fibers share both structural and functional features of skeletal and smooth muscle fibers. Maybe you can have this as a blank question or any question format. They can assess any fact at this point. Their main characteristics include, so cardiac muscle fibers are cylindrical, as you can see here, so it's similar to the cardiac, similar to the skeletal. Now, here we said they're cylindrical, and here we are saying they are cylindrical. So, but they're smaller and much shorter than the skeletal muscle fibers. And they're also branched, and branches meet together. So look at the image here. You can see some branches, and those branches can actually meet together. But here in the skeletal muscle, we don't have such branches. The heart muscle fiber is characterized by the transverse striations, similar to those in skeletal muscle fibers. Therefore, cardiac muscle is classified as a striated muscle. The heart muscle fibers are connected end-to-end at specialized regions of their plasma membranes called intercalated discs. Can we see it here? We can see the intercalated discs here. So the intercalated discs are very important. Like half of the questions about the heart muscle you're going to get is about the intercalated discs. So the heart muscle fibers, they're going to be connected end to end. Okay, so the muscles are connected end to end at specialized regions of their plasma membranes, and those regions are called intercalated discs. So if they ask you what is the location and function of the intercalated discs, the location is going to be in the cardiac muscle cells, and the function, they connect the heart muscle fibers end to end at specialized regions of their plasma membranes. The membrane of the heart muscle fiber is thinner and more delicate than that of the skeletal muscle fiber. And the heart muscle fibers contains a single centrally located nucleus. So here, if they want to tell you to describe the nucleus of the cardiac muscle. Justify, cardiac muscle is also called striated muscle. So because the heart muscle fibers goes by transverse striations, so here we describe it as transverse, and similar to those in the skeletal muscle fibers. Therefore, cardiac muscle is classified as striated muscle. Justify, cardiac muscle tissue is considered involuntary because the muscle fibers do not perform their function under the human control. And finally, we have the table of the muscle fibers, and we can have like comparison. So description, general features here. Like here we're saying, okay, the fibers are small and short. Here they're large and long. We've already discussed everything. There's nothing new here. Just read it straight from the book or straight from the PDF, which I'm providing. Now we have the nervous tissue. The nervous tissue functions to propagate nerve impulses across different parts of the body over long distances. So what is the function of the nervous tissue? The function of the nervous tissue is, in general, we're talking, is to propagate nerve impulses across different parts of the body over long distances. So what is a nerve impulse? Like, what do we mean when we say nerve impulses? Now, a nerve impulse is like an electrical signal that travels along a nerve cell. Kind of like a message shooting through a wire. So it starts when the neuron is stimulated, for example, by chemicals, and this is going to cause a quick change in the electrical charge across the neuron's membrane, and the change travels down the neuron like a wave of electricity, super fast. And the impulse jumps from one part of the neuron to the next until it reaches the end. Then the message gets passed on either to another neuron or a muscle or a gland. So imagine a row of dominoes falling one after the other. The first one gets pushed and the rest follow. That's how the impulse moves through a neuron. So the nervous tissue is composed of nerve cells, which are called neurons, which are supported by accompanying cells known as neuroglia. Neuroglial cells do not perform nervous functions themselves, but provide structural and functional support to the neurons. So the neuroglial cells, if they ask you about the function of neuroglial in general, you're just going to say they do not perform nervous functions, but provide structural and functional support to the neuron. So they perform support, the main function. Now we're going to talk about the neuron, the nervous cell, or the nerve cell. And we have three parts here. We have the cell body, dendrites, and the axon. The cell body represents the enlarged part of the neuron, and it contains the cytoplasm and a nucleus with a clearly visible nucleolus. The cytoplasm includes neurofibrils and Nissel's granules, which serve as sites for protein synthesis or sites of protein gathering, as the book described it. And the cell body also contains the typical living components found in other cells. You can have this as a definition question, characteristics, a lot of question formats. The main thing is you understand / memorize what is going on here. So you can have a definition questions for Nissl granules, very important. The Nissl granules is very, very important. Location, function of Nissl granules, definition is very important. Now, there are granules found in the cytoplasm of the nerve cell or the neuron, and they serve as a site for protein synthesis or sites for protein gathering. And here, the location, as we said, again, in the cytoplasm of the nerve cell. The function, they're sites for protein gathering or protein synthesis. And Nissl granules are actually ribosomes in the nerve cell, but they don't mention this in the book for some reason. You can have a blank question. They're telling you the cytoplasm includes, or the cytoplasm of the neuron includes a blank and Nissl granules, and the blank being neurofibrils. Or, for example, what is the location of the neurofibrils? And you're just going to say in the cytoplasm of the neuron. The dendrites. The dendrites are the extensions that arise from the cell body, and they function to transmit the signals or nerve impulses toward the cell body. So the direction of this impulse is coming toward the cell body. And the dendrites are actually short extensions. They're short mini extensions. But the axon, on the other hand, is usually a single extension, and it is a very long extension, like way longer than the dendrite. And it transports the nerve impulses away from the cell body. So the direction of the nerve impulse of the axon is away from the cell body. It is usually single and long, and may or may not be covered with medullary sheath or myelin sheath or myelin membrane, or medullary membrane, like whatever term you want. But the book mentions medullary membrane or medullary sheath. So go with the norm, go with what the book wants you to say. The nervous cells or the neurons are usually classified according to the number of the extensions that arise from the cell body. So we're going to have monopolar neuron, bipolar neuron, pseudo-unipolar neuron, and the multipolar neuron. You can have a question telling you to list only the classifications of the nervous cells, and it's very, very easy, to be honest. It's like the easiest question you can get. So it's monopolar, bipolar, pseudo-unipolar, and multipolar. The monopolar neuron, the cell body of the unipolar neuron, is oval or spherical with a single extension. So let's look at the image. We don't have an image for the unipolar neuron, whatever. The bipolar neuron, the cell body is spindle-shaped with two extensions. So this is the bipolar neuron. So we can see here the cell body, and we have two extensions. And we're going to have pseudo-unipolar. It's a single process, extends from the cell body, and then divides near its base into an axon and a dendrite. So pseudo-unipolar meaning a fake unipolar, or like a false unipolar. It gives you the impression that it is, okay, you can see that it is unipolar because you have a cell body with a single extension here, but this single extension then is going to divide into two. So like they're not going, for example, they're not going like this one, like just a single one going like this, but no, they're going to both directions here and there. So they're like a mix of uni and bipolar. So that's why we just use the term pseudo-unipolar neuron. And for the multipolar neurons, the cell body is star-shaped with multiple extensions. So as you can see here, this is the multipolar. We're going to have a star-shaped because we have way too many extensions. So, and those extensions are mostly dendrites, the short dendrites, and here is the single axon that we have. The neuroglial cells, or the neuroglia, they form the largest portion of the nervous tissue. They constitute about like 1 to 50 times the number of the neurons. In other words, each neuron is accompanied by approximately 50 neuroglial cells. Neuroglia occupy more than half of the brain's volume, and their main functions are to provide support for neurons and to phagocytize bacteria and cellular debris. Now let's look at the important questions. So they're going to tell you what is the function for each of the following. Function, the Nissl granules, they're sites of protein synthesis or sites of protein gathering. The neuroglial cells, so we're going to have two functions. We're going to have support the neurons, this is the main function, and they're also going to phagocytize the bacteria and cellular debris. And the dendrites, as we said, that they're going to transmit the signals or nerve impulses toward the cell body, and the other function being they increase the neuron's surface area. This from the fourth chapter. And the axon, they transport nerve impulses away from the cell body, and the nervous tissue in general, we said that they propagate nerve impulses across different parts of the body over long distances. What is the location of dendrites? Their extensions arise from the cell bodies of the neuron. Compare dendrites and axons, very important comparison question. We said the dendrites are short and the axons are long, and the dendrites are usually multiple and the axons are usually single, and the dendrites transmit signals or nerve impulses toward the cell body, so the direction of the impulse is toward the cell body, and the axon transport the nerve impulses away from the cell body, so the direction is away from the cell body.